I'm excited. This NFL weekend is, as a Seahawks fan, I suffered a terrible setback to my playoff hopes
I
last
know,
night.
unfortunately. That
We won't.
fumble hurt so bad
I
because that just changed the game. It was
it
7-3,
yeah.
and it flips the whole game right
They're
there.
also dry. Like they hadn't really been moving the ball well. I guess this is a quick little aside as we go into the Saturday Sunday matchup. But last night in the Thursday game, yeah, they're moving the ball kind of well. They hadn't been doing it all first half. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, if they pick up 2 or 3 more first downs, they're in field goal range. You
Seven
kick the
six
field goal,
or
it's 7-6 at half, and then the 49ers get the ball, and it's a whole new ball game. Instead, Travis Homer just the worst fumble
and
I've seen in a long time, and you're just like, that's game. Like the second
you knew it. It was it.
there's nothing that because then they're gonna get the second half, and I think they scored on that opening drive, and you're
Yep.
like, all right, cool,
And
cool,
and
cool,
there it
cool.
was. And
Yep.
it puts your team in the spot where you're forced to throw. You become one-dimensional
Yep.
against one of the best defenses in the league that's just going to sit and tee off on you and make your offensive line look bad. And it's a bummer when you see things like that happen and like
Yeah,
you can just feel it.
but
Right
there's also
there.
the fan side of you. Like you're watching it with like the actual analyst, the better side of you, and you're like, okay, this game's over.
Yep,
Like
done.
49ers covered at halftime.
Yep.
But then there's the fan side of you that's just watching. You're like, well, if we get a
We're
score
still
and a
in the
stop,
game. We're
then we get
still
the
in it.
onside kick. We can win this game.
And that was what's frustrating late is that you keep getting the ball back where they hadn't
There was a backdoor opportunity in that
Mhm.
game that I thought the Seahawks
Yeah.
were going to slide in and cover the 3.5
Mhm.
because of just how the game had figured its way out. Because Kyle Shanahan, some very interesting game management decisions yet again last night. But playoff implications still for a lot of teams. We're going to start on Saturday, move to the Sunday 1 p.m. game, then move to the Sunday primetime game. But tomorrow, yeah, today's Friday, so Saturday's primetime game. Dolphins-Bills. I want to get your take on this before we really dive into the X's and O's. Do you think the weather will play as big of a role as everyone is talking about?
A little bit. It is kind of funny that the thing I saw floating around today was that the Dolphins, when they played it in
Yeah.
LA, had heaters by the bench when it was 55 degrees, and so they're going to be going out there. And the thing is that the Bills, keep in mind, like they're more used to it.
Yeah.
But what's funny is like they're not like some incredible overpowering run team,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Overall, so they're not necessarily built for it all that much either.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad opponent. It's just we're starting to see the Dolphins kind of come back to life a little bit because they were beating up on bad defenses for a while, and they were getting the best of a lot of the bounces too. Like their defense isn't very good, and what's happening now is opponents have made a little bit of an adjustment. They're popping the receivers at the line. They're
Yes.
jamming them. And so the timing is all off from Tua and the receivers. And you can tell they haven't readjusted
Yeah.
back to everyone's adjustment now. And now that's the question. Can they do it? I mean, Tua was 3 of 17 to start the game last
Yeah.
week. And that was against a Chargers defense that
That's
isn't
not
that good. And they're depleted and they're banged up. So now playing their third consecutive road game, they had to go all the way from LA to Buffalo. But this is a massive game for them with the way they've been trending negatively and things getting a little bit competitive there at the back end of the AFC. So like, I don't know if I want to lay the number with the Bills. I would probably lean. I'm not a Dolphins fan at all. Like I have been playing against them quite a bit throughout the year. I think they've been, and if they get into the playoffs, like definitely a team I'll be playing against in a playoff spot. But this feels like a really good spot for them, because the Bills, they've quietly not been playing well because they've won.
I put this exactly in my notes. Despite a 4-game winning streak, it might be the most underwhelming 4-game winning streak I've ever witnessed.
Yep. They started last week with 5 consecutive punts in the game against the Jets. That game overall had 10 straight punts to start the game. And the Bills only had 3 first downs over the first 5 drives. And it actually was the first time since Josh Allen's 3rd career start where they went 5 straight drives, punt, consecutively. Then what happened? They scored 4 times in a row to open up a 20-7 lead.
Yeah.
Then they got a little cold again, and they went 3 and out 3 times in a row, and they gave the Jets a chance to get back in the game. The Jets ended up covering that game. They were down by 8 with a chance to go win the game. And Mike White got speared like Brock Lesnar. I don't even know how he was walking around. It was incredible.
And Zach Wilson, because of that spear, is going to be starting for the Jets when we talk about Lions-Jets later. But I think the two plays for this game, I'm with you on Dolphins +7. Mm-hmm. I'm also on the under here.
I agree.
Because of one, they're calling from anywhere between like 2 and 10 inches of snow, which right there tells me there's not going to be a kicking game. So you're not going to get 3 points here, 3 points there. And extra points aren't even going to be a gimme. But also, the Bills have that that weird kind of hot and coldness where they may only score 14 points because they had 2 back-to-back drives where they looked absolutely dominant and then just are ice cold the rest of the game. The Dolphins on the other side, they've looked absolutely terrible, like you said, especially since they lost their left tackle, Terron Armstead. And I dug up this stat because I was like, Tua, according to EPA, expected points added, and CPOE, completion percentage over expectation, he's the second best quarterback in the NFL right now behind Patrick Mahomes. You then look at the last 2 weeks where they've lost both games. The defenses have started to jam the receivers at the line, played more press coverage. He's dropped from second in the NFL to 34th. I've made doing all like the fun little things on the website. So of the quarterbacks who've taken 25 snaps or more over the last 2 weeks, there's 34 that have taken that many snaps. He is 34th.
Dead last.
He has been terrible these last 2 weeks.
And it's not. Look, he's played tougher opponents, but what's concerning about it is he's missing throws to open guys that he still should be making in those spots, right? When you go 28 of 61 in a 2-game stretch,
it's not good.
Like it's on you a little bit too, even if it is your offensive line. And I agree with you. Like, I don't think these two teams are thought of as these powerhouse offenses, and they're not coming in flying on all cylinders. Hell, the Bills, last week, they were 2 of 13 on third down. They only had 233 total yards in that game. The Jets had more total yards. Jets were better on third down. Jets won the time of possession by almost 6 games. It was the fewest net yards for the Bills in any game this year by almost 100 yards. And the way these two teams are trending, I completely agree with you. I'm looking at it in a lowish kind of number that we think is going to be low scoring. I'd always take the dog, right? Especially when they're getting like 7.
Yeah. I mean, the Bills are going to if all things considered, if we think the under is going to hit, there's going to be a low scoring game. The Bills you're telling me will have to score I'm assuming the Dolphins will score at least 10 points. Yeah. So the Bills have to score more than 17 to cover. I just and that sounds like a really boring football game, which I think it has the makings to be.
Yeah, but think of the game with the Patriots a few years ago too, right? Like some of these games where you just cannot throw the ball. Yeah. Right? And then we can see early nobody fantasy, it's the fantasy playoffs, right? Yeah. Right now too, starting for a lot of people, and a lot of people have tons of guys from both of these teams.
Here's a hot take. If you can't throw the football, I trust Mike McDaniel and his run game scheming more than the Bills.
Completely agree.
If you're feeling like a unit or two that you just are itching to bet somewhere on a dog, maybe the Dolphins. I'm not saying this is a best bet, but if this game comes down to who has the better running attack, I'd put I think plus 230 money line is some good value on Miami there.
Yeah, I agree.
So moving from that game, 1 p.m. Sunday, another game that has a lot of playoff implications for both sides, but in different conferences. NFC Lions, AFC Jets. I love this time of year when every game, I'm on the 538 playoff predictor. So if this team wins, this team loses, this jumps it from 25% to a 72% chance to make the playoffs. And that's kind of what this game is. If the Lions are able to win this game, they are in the driver's seat. Because Washington and New York are going to combust. Seattle's already combusted. All of a sudden, Lions just put themselves in the driver's seat. They need to win this game. And on the flip side, the AFC East has the Bills and the Dolphins ahead of them. And the Jets have no shot at winning that division. They need to win this game to get a solid spot in the wild card.
It is really cool that in Week 15, we're talking about the Lions and the Jets, two franchises that have not been good recently, right? We don't have to
That's
sugarcoat
putting it
it.
lightly. That's putting it lightly.
Like the last decade plus, these teams have not been good. And now they're both young. They're both kind of fun.
Yes.
Like there's some excitement about both of these teams, and they're legitimately in striking range right now, 15 weeks into the year, which is really cool. 6-7 and 7-6, these two teams, and they're both good ATS, because if you and I were talking before the year, we wouldn't have said that in week 15, this game is going to mean anything other than draft position, right?
Yep.
They would have been the opposite, but they're 9-4 against the spread are the Lions, and the Jets are 8-5 against the spread. And man, this Jets team has a really good defense, but this Lions team, everything has been trending positively for them for a long ways now. Like you look at last week, they held the Vikings running backs to just 22 rushing yards. And then they didn't give up a sack. So their defensive line holds the opposite run game, and then their offensive line is one of the best in the league. And what's so cool, they win the game on a play where their right tackle is in motion and he picks up the third down to ice it for them. They had a 41-yard fake punt run. They've won 5 of their last 6 games. Their only loss during that stretch was a close loss on Thanksgiving to the Bills. Last week, even like things that were a bummer for them, the rookie wide receiver, Williams, who was hurt and not playing for a lot of the year, he comes back now, and in his second week, the first catch he ever has is a 41-yard touchdown, which is really cool. They've scored 25 or more points 5 straight games. That's the first time they've done that since 1954. They've scored 31 or more in 4 of their last 5. And it's not fluky. They lead the league in red zone conversion rate. They are second in goal-to-go conversion rate. And they've given up only 123 sacks yards this year. That's second lowest in the league. Over the last, I can keep going. Over the last 6 games, 20.3 points per game allowed. There's just a lot of positive metrics right now about this Lions team.
Yeah.
All of that being said, we can come back to one idea about Jared Goff outdoors and in cold weather, and he's not nearly been quite as good playing against teams when he has to go on the road. And this could be the situation here where it's cold, maybe a little bit windy, and is he going to be the same guy operating that offense?
It'd be really interesting to see. Yeah, like you said, the Lions during this winning streak have been absolutely phenomenal. They've only turned the ball over 3 times. 2 of those came in their one loss since they took down Green Bay on November 6th. They've only lost 1 game, and it was to the Bills where they threw 2 interceptions, and it doesn't surprise you that that's the game they lost. But the interesting thing, not only is it outdoors with Jared Goff, the Lions offense, one of the best in the league, but they've been beating up on really bad defenses. And when they do play good defenses, they struggle a little bit. They go from expected points added per play from .056, which is 8th best in the NFL, against defenses that are top 10 in the EPA. They're negative .1375, which is last in the NFL. So they struggle against good defenses. I will say there's an outlier game that's really pulling that all down, and it's their 29-0 Patriots. And in that game, to defend the Lions just a little bit, they were not going to win that game or anything. They were severely banged up that game, where they were missing St. Brown, Swift, a lot of their skill position players. And then throughout the game, I think they had 4 defensive backs have to leave the game because of injury while the game was going on. They just did not have much of a team there. In horse racing, sometimes we just put a line right through a bad race where a horse stumbles at the start and then gets in trouble. That's kind of what I did with that game for them, because it's so bad. But then on the Jets side, if you look at some of their losses, they could have beat the Vikings. They could have won their last 2 games. They outgained the Bills. They had more first downs, more total yards. They were even in yards, but they had 2 turnovers and they had 7 penalties. 3 of them were automatic first downs for the Bills. And they won the time of possession by almost 9 minutes in that game. But they lost 2 games to the Patriots where Zach Wilson was starting, that if Mike White was starting, I think they probably win both of those games. And that's what's fun about both of these teams have done what you see young teams sort of do too. They've lost some games that they probably should have won. Detroit earlier in the year and the Jets a little lately. But
this is a really fun game, one of the most intriguing games of the weekend. I think I might lean a little to the over in this game because I think the Lions defense has been better, but they're still not
the Lions defense.
Yeah, they're 30th in the red zone with a 65% touchdown rate allowed. They're at the goal line they allow 80%. So I think both teams should be able to score. I do agree with you. I don't think the Lions will be lighting it up, but their offense is still good enough that I think they'll be able to hit a couple strikes here. I would lean over in this game because, man, I have a lot of any lean to the side, either way side, I can completely be sold, positives or negatives for either of these teams at a short number. So I think my play would probably be over slightly.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting during those games they were playing some of the top defenses in the league, the Lions. They were without Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they also, of course, were without Jameson Williams. And all of a sudden you add in two of the best playmakers, or you assume Williams will become one of the best playmakers, but you have these two amazing playmakers now in the fold. You're going out against the Jets, 6th in EP. Yeah, like you said, you could tell me Jets, and I'd be like, all right, I can see that argument. You could tell me Lions. All right, I can see that argument. I think the over is a fantastic play. If I'm betting this game, this might be my my love for moneyline underdogs, but I love the Lions here at plus 105.
I'd be a fan of their team, and I think sometimes it's the Hard Knocks thing too, because I watched Hard Knocks before at the beginning of the year, and then I thought I didn't think necessarily they would be a playoff team, but I did think they'd be like that feisty, take the next step team.
Yes, same.
So early in the year, I was a little disappointed when they were losing some of those games where they were up and they kept spitting it out, and I was like, same old Lions. But they really have progressed, and you know what? A lot of credit to Dan Campbell because when they were 1-4 or 5, a lot of locker room could just say screw it and they just give up, right? But he kept out going, and these guys believe in him. They believe what he's selling them, and that's half the battle.
Imagine how different this line is if the Lions. So early on in the season, you said whatever they started. Yeah, they started terribly, but of those, I think 4 or 5 of those games, they had the ball last in a 1-possession game and just could not finish it. And you just think maybe what if they win 2 of those? What if they even win 1 of those? And just how different Vegas looks at this game, how different kind of the narrative is in this game.
Minnesota game when they were up double digits twice in that game in week 3 and they ended up losing. Week 1 they were never going to win that game, but they came back late and made it close against Philly. Against Seattle, they lost by a field goal when they gave up 48 points to Seattle. They ended up losing a game to Miami in the same situation where they were up, controlled a lot of that game, and had chances. There was one play that stood out where it was 3rd and 11 that Miami picked up a huge first down. Miami was incredible on 3rd down that game. If they don't get one of those 3rd downs, the Lions win. And those are 3 games that flip for them, and we're talking about them being their division leader. I truly think we saw them play Minnesota. I think they are a better team, and they would be a much more fun team to watch in a playoff game match up with another good team than Minnesota.
Don't get me started on the Vikings, the biggest frauds in the NFL that people still want to be in the comments section of DRF Sportsbook Instagram telling me how the Vikings are actually good and each week they lose worse and worse. But moving on from that game, Giants-Commanders wrapping things up. I don't know if this is going to be a good game, but it has a lot of playoff implications, so we have to talk about it. Essentially, the winner isn't in the playoffs, but they have an above 90% chance to make the playoffs if they win this game. Loser, well, it drops to nearly impossible for them to make the playoffs. Giants have imploded since their 7-1 start. The exact opposite for the Commanders. Since putting Taylor Heineke in, they went from one of the worst offenses to the 14th most efficient offense. What do you expect out of this game? Do you think... I was kind of shocked to see -4.5 next to the Commanders.
Yeah, because what's weird, and that was really what win or lose with this game, it just seems a tad high, I thought, because these two teams just played each other a couple weeks ago and tied with the Giants. Now, so if we think about that, the Commanders played the Giants, then had a bye, and then played the Giants again.
Dude, what schedule is that? That's the weirdest schedule I've seen in a long time.
Honestly, how unfair is that to the Giants that Washington has been preparing for the same team for 3 weeks? The week leading into the Giants game, and then in their bye week, and then now in this week, they've been able to prepare
It's
for the
insane.
Giants the entire time. Whereas the Giants had to go worry about the Cowboys, they beat the Eagles. They had to play the Eagles last week, and get beat up by the Eagles. So really unfair. But just looking at over 3, and at like 4.5, I would lean Giants because I do think the Giants know their season is on the line here. I think every little bit of what they have, you're going to get it here in this game. But it is hard coming into this game because a lot of the metrics are very positive Commanders and very negative Giants. But if I am saying these two teams played a few weeks ago in a game where I thought the Giants should have won that game before it went to overtime, and then they end up tying. So, at more than the field goal, like 3.5 would be my buy-in point on the Giants here, leaning on the Giants side. But like a lot of concerning things. I mean, they're 0-3-1 in their last 4 games. They've got nothing from Barkley last week because they were down, but over the last few games, he has really taken a hit. He went from weeks 1 through 7, 24 touches per game, 129 yards per game, 5.3 yards per touch. His last 6 starts, it's down from 24 to 20. He's down from basically 130 yards per game to 73. And 3.5 yards per touch versus 5.3. And, there was one game earlier in the year where he carried it 35 times, which I think was the high for any player this year in the league. And he had receptions in that game too. And we're seeing it with Jacobs a little bit too. These guys are guys. They're not machines. If your body's going to wear down a little bit and you're not going to have that same kind of burst. And as you mentioned, then on the flip side, you've got the Commanders who, ever since Heineke started, they've won 5 of the 7 games. And the 2 games they didn't win, they tied, and they blew a 10-point lead to the Vikings when they had no business losing that game to Minnesota, and they dominated the whole game. So they very easily could have won 7 in a row. The offense looks much better. I honestly think that the Commanders as a team like him better than Carson Wentz as a quarterback.
Yeah, it's almost like the Jets and Mike White. Like
the rest of the team gets up for him. You can see the defense hitting guys. The receivers make great plays. It's like they can understand that this dude is going to go run through a wall for them, right? Heineke is sort of that like bakery, Brett Favre-ish kind of like he'll throw a block in there and probably do something he shouldn't do as a quarterback, but the rest of the team gets
they love it. They're going to eat it up. Yeah.
So, I mean, I lean Giants, but I do like a lot of what the Commanders have been doing lately. And I think in the same sense I was just talking about, like, if I wanted to pick which one of these two teams I'd rather see come playoff time, I'd much rather see the Commanders. Hell, they almost beat Tom Brady a couple years ago when the Bucs went on and won the Super Bowl that year. He kept it close, did Heineke. So I like the number better for the Giants, though, in this spot.
Yeah, I agree. Although, so does the public, and that always worries me, and I always come back to this. Right now, 76% of the public on the Giants at plus 4.5. But
Joe Public over here, sense. I'm sorry.
No, it makes sense, though, right? Like
it does.
Just everything about it. The thing is, Chase Young, who hasn't played a snap this season, he was supposed to come back after week 4, then after week 5, then after week 6, and here we are, in week 15, still hasn't played a snap. He's listed as questionable this week. If he does make his return, I think that is a huge jolt in the arm for the Commanders, especially to stop this kind of play-action rollout type of offense that the Giants like to deploy. He will be key in that.
They finally became the defense this year that we all sort of thought they were going to be last year.
Yes.
This team has quietly had a very, very good defense through a lot of the year. I think by defensive efficiency metrics, they're number 9. They're number 4 against the run. Like one of the best run-stopping teams in the league. So it's not shocking when you have all that talent on the defensive side. Like more likely than not, it's going to come together and figure some things out.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it'll be a very high drama game. I struggle to say that it'll be a good game because 40.5 points, probably right about on the nose about what this team would not be surprised to see like a a 17-20 type of game.
Completely agree.
And
Absolutely. That's exactly what it feels like. And in a game, again, where it's a low-scoring game, it's a divisional game where these two teams know each other well. They've already played each other, and they just played each other.
And they tied. Like, they tied. And you're telling me the Commanders are going to win by not just more than a field goal, but by 5 points or more. That's
Going through 4 is also another important number too, right?
Yeah.
Not only getting above 3, but then once you get above 4, where a lot of games end with a 4-point differential. So, yeah, I think, again, low total, we'll take the dog in a game where we think it's going to be low scoring and a couple plays here matter either way. So lots of similarities for us, it seems like, this weekend. We're either going to have a great weekend or we're going to be in some trouble.
I will say this is a game I'm completely staying away from the moneyline underdog. I would not touch Giants plus 160 with a 10-foot pole because I think there's a stronger likelihood the Commanders blow them out for the reason that they've been preparing for the Giants for 3 straight weeks.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, the Giants, and I hate this meme and I hate this cliche, they got that dog in them though. You know, like,
they do.
The Giants just somehow stick in games until the very end.
They do, and you know, I think they've started to learn, like, last week for them too, I'm not going to gate, because, like, when Philly plays well, not many teams are going to be able to keep up with them as well-rounded and well-balanced as they are. But I expect to see some Daniel Jones running in this game quite a bit, because that's when they're a lot better. Like, he needs to run and give them that option. And now you're at the point of the year where you're not worried about guys not running to get hurt anymore. You need to win to move forward, right? Early in the year, it's like, do we want our quarterback running all the time, taking all these hits? Hey, you're the Giants now. You can't wait for anything like that anymore. It's from the water boy, you know, the comment they keep, last game of the year, can't hold anything back. You sort of feel like that for the Giants, right? Because if they don't win this game, then they're going to be well behind Washington, and they're going to be in some serious trouble trying to get back in because of that tie. It's going to really hurt them.
And what a weird, as you've been talking about Daniel Jones, like, just what a weird year it's been. Because, like, after week 12, you're sitting there, Daniel Jones is about to get paid. Geno Smith is about to get paid. Geno still might get paid. But, like, Daniel Jones, there's no way that guy is, unless he's coming back on a team-friendly 2-year deal where it's like $15 million a year, which maybe $17 million a year, something like that. But just a month ago, we were talking about how Gino was an MVP candidate, and all these other teams that were like the Jets were undefeated when Zach Wilson played, and now Zach Wilson is only starting because Mike White got injured. Like, what a weird season of quarterbacking it's been.
It is, and fun games this week, and we've got college today on Friday, NFL Saturday, NFL Sunday, NFL Monday, bowl games continuing on. Man, I'm looking forward to it. This is a great time of year.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on, Gino. Before we jump up on out of here, plug away anything, everything where people can find you on social, where people can find you, your podcasts. I know you're always doing something with BTV, some awesome stuff wherever it is.
Yeah, thanks so much. The best place to give me a follow is on Twitter. It's me, Gino B. Knock on wood that Twitter will be around for a while. But also, we have our podcast that you can subscribe to. That's What G Said Podcast. And I cover all sports, pop culture stuff too. If you're a fan of, like, Star Wars and Marvel, I do all the recaps for movies and TV shows. We just did the season of Andor. Each episode just had a full Black Panther 2 Wakanda Forever deep dive too, which was really cool. And then, you know, everything going on, like on the last show that I put out yesterday, we had previews for every game with my friend Eric, who I think you're going to be joining next week, and you're going to be talking some sports with him. He's a really sharp handicapper. Previewed all the bowl games, and I'm a big horse racing guy as well. I worked on TVG Network for a few years, and now I work with different racetracks that I have relationships with. I work with Santa Anita. They're going to be starting up the day after Christmas. I work with Louisiana Downs, with Woodbine, a couple different tracks. So if you're on social media, if you're on Twitter, give me a follow. If you like sports and you're a fan of gambling, there'll be tons of free videos and content out there to help you. You'll be annoyed by all the stuff I post.
we love any type of edge we can get here, because as myself, I'm not a sharp bettor by any means, so I always tune in to see what edges you guys are trying to hand out and using whatever I can. So thank you again for coming on. Have a let's win some money this bowl season.
Let's
be profitable. And if you're in Iowa, be sure to bet with DRF Sportsbook, ia.drf.com.